Hi guys, welcome to my Next.js crash course. In this video, I'll be showing you the benefits of using Next.js over something like Create React App. This course is not just all theory. After the theory part of the course, I'll also be showing you how to build an app using Next.js. My name is Akash Devgan and welcome to my channel where I teach the latest and greatest in web development. If you are new here, please make sure to click that subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Without wasting any more time, let's get into it. Now, before digging deeper into Next.js, let me show you what we'll be building in this course. Now, this is the app that I built using Next.js. It's a simple note-taking app. So what you can do is you can click on Add Note. I'll redirect you to this page. You can add the title to Note 1. This is the content for Note 1 and hit Add. Once you hit Add, your note will appear in the sidebar. Let's add another note. Note 2. Content for Note 2. Hit Add. Now you can toggle between the two notes. You can also search. You can also edit the note. And you can also delete the note. Now here's the best part about this app. Now if I refresh the page, as you can see, your data persists. I am using local storage to persist the data. Now this is the app that we'll be building in this course. Now this course assumes that you have a basic understanding of JavaScript, React, state management in React, and how to use JSX to make React components. Now, if you are lacking in any of the 4 skills that I mentioned, I highly recommend learning these skills first and then coming back to this course. And finally, let's start with what you are here for. What is Next.js? Next.js is a React framework built by Vercel, formerly known as Ziet. It lets you build production-ready web applications using React. Now you might be thinking, Create React App already allows you to do that. But let me tell you, Next.js comes with a lot more features than your typical Create React app. Now, let's look into why you should be using Next.js over something like Create React App. Now, here's a list of features that Next.js comes with out of the box. Number 1 is hybrid rendering. React applications can be rendered in multiple ways. Number 1 is server-side rendering. In this method, the server will generate HTML for the whole page and then send it to the browser, very much similar to web applications built in languages like PHP. If you are doing server-side rendering in your React application, most probably you would want to server-side render only the home page or the first page of your web application, and then let React take over from that point on using method called rehydration. Now, second type of rendering is called client-side rendering. This is where the server will send a huge JavaScript file to the browser, and then that JavaScript file is responsible for rendering your views and handling routing, etc. If you use Create React App to build your web applications, then you are probably using this rendering method. Third rendering method, it's called static rendering. In this method, server will pre-generate HTML pages from your React components at build time. And then on every request from the browser, server will send the pre-rendered HTML page requested by the browser. Create React App only comes with client-side rendering, but Next.js gives you the option to pick whichever rendering method you prefer out of the box. Now, the second major feature that Next.js offers is file system routing. Next.js comes with built-in file system routing out of the box, which means you don't need to use React Router to manage routing in your React application. Now, if you're a fan of CSS modules or Sass, then you'll love Next.js because Next.js comes with both of these technologies pre-configured. These are some of the main features that Next.js offers, but Next.js is not only limited to these. Next.js also offers things like automatic image optimizations, automatic code splitting, creating API routes to provide backend capabilities, and much more. Now, that was a lot of theory. Now, let's go ahead and build app using Next.js. Alright guys, let's start setting up the Next.js app. Now in order to follow along, you will need Node.js installed on your computer. So if you don't already have Node.js, you can go to nodejs.org and install Node.js based on whichever operating system that you're on. And Node.js also will install npm for you. So we'll use npm to install all the dependencies for the project. Alright guys, once you have downloaded and installed Node.js on your computer, it will also install npm and npx behind the scenes. And we'll use npx to use Next.js CLI. Now npx is a tool that you can use to execute node binaries without installing them on your computer directly. So it's pretty handy tool. So we'll use npx to create a new Next.js app. So let's create new Next.js app using npx. So we'll type npx create next app notify. Need to install the following packages. Say yes. Okay, and now we'll go to our notify folder that we just created, and you can open that folder in whichever code editor that you use. So for me, I use Visual Studio Code, so I'll go ahead and open notify folder in that. Okay, so this is what the bare bones Next.js app looks like. There's not much going on here. We'll go ahead and run the Next.js app using npm run dev. Okay, so our server is started at port 3000. All right. Okay, so this is what the Next.js app looks like out of the box. So we'll go ahead and remove all this content and start from scratch. We'll go to index.js in pages. Now, as I mentioned earlier when I was explaining all the features that Next.js offers, Next.js has inbuilt file system routing. So for example, I created index.js inside pages. This index.js will automatically act as a home page in your app. So we'll go ahead and remove all this content. Remove styling. All right. So yeah, now we're starting from pretty much scratch. So we'll begin by installing all the dependencies that we need for this project. So let's do npm install ls cache. Now ls cache is a package that we'll use to store our data in local storage and to fetch our data from local storage. This is a pretty handy package for anything related to local storage. We'll install Sass. Next.js requires Sass to run Sass files and stuff, to compile Sass files. We'll install Semantic UI React and Semantic UI CSS. Alright, so after installing all the node packages, we'll go ahead and set up React Context API. We'll be using Context API in this project to manage all our state. So let's go ahead and create a folder in the root directory called context. And inside this context folder, I'll create a file called notes context.js. Now let's import React along with create context and use reducer. We'll also be needing ls cache. Okay. Let's first go ahead and export our context. Now let's set up our reducer function. So state action will destructure the action object. For now, we'll just return the state, and later down the project we will add few actions. For example, add node, delete, or edit node actions to our reducer function. Now create nodes context okay. So we want to have some kind of initial state for our reducers. So what we'll do is create a const. Now what we want to do is, if the nodes already exist in the local storage, we want to load it from there, or else we want to pass an empty array. So what I'll do is ls cache dot get all nodes, or so what this basically is saying, if the nodes exist in local storage, just get the nodes from there, or else just pass an empty array as initial state. Now ls cache gives you this handy method called get, which helps you to get all the local storage variable values that you have set. Okay, so we'll go ahead and simply return our context now. Alright, so this is pretty much the setup of our context API. Now, along with the context API, we are also using use reducer API from React. Now, why use reducer? Because we'll be performing bunch of actions. For example, deleting a node, adding a node, editing a node. So it's better to use reducer instead of checking the the parameters yourself manually. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and open up underscore app.js. Now underscore app.js under pages is like a wrapper for all of your app. So whatever, for example, whatever you pass onto here will be available to on all your pages and stuff. And whatever styles you import here will be available throughout your app. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and import notes context here and wrap this component inside notes context. Now what this will do is it will basically give us access to all the state that we are managing using this reuse reducer hook, because we are passing that use reducer hook as a value to context provider. That's pretty much setting up our state using context API and use reducer hook. Now for some reason my notes h1 is not showing up on the screen, and I figured out I made a mistake here by not renaming the children properly. So now if I save, there you go. Alright, so now we can finally start building the app. So we'll start by creating a navigation component first. So I'll go ahead and create a folder called components. And inside that component folder, I'll create a file called navigation.js. Let's import React and also import link from next link. Okay, so we'll simply return this link component from Next.js is basically to link different pages of your apps. So for example, here whenever someone clicks on the logo, we'll simply redirect them to homepage. It is very similar to the link component that you guys use when setting up React router or something. Nav, and inside nav I'll put h1. If I hit save, forgot to export it. Now we want this navigation to be visible throughout our app. So what I'll do is I'll import navigation inside underscore app.js and then display it there. Alright, so that's our navigation, but I want to style it, so let's add some styling to it. Now before we start styling, let's import some Google fonts to make our fonts look pretty. Now if you remember, I told you this underscore app.js act as a wrapper for all of your app. That is true only for the components and pages. But let's say if you want to put something in the head tag or inside a body tag, that can be anything. It can be some scripts for your marketing purposes or something. That goes inside a special page called underscore document.js. Now anything that you want to be available throughout the app, but it has to go inside head tag or body tag, should be put inside underscore document.js. Rest of the stuff like components and stuff can go inside underscore app.js. So we'll go ahead and import document from next document along with. Now all four of these things that I'll import are mandatory. So we'll import HTML, head, main, and next script. Now all four of these are mandatory. So let's do class my and will return HTML head. Now body can be HTML tag, it doesn't have to be a component. And inside body we'll call these two class components, main and next script. Now you don't have to go into much details on how these work. This is something that Next.js has implemented, and I guess they need it for the inner workings or something. So we'll go ahead and export my document. Now if you want to read more about this my document, you can go to Next.js documentation. So we are basically doing this stuff. So now let's dump our Google Fonts inside head tag. Don't worry about the links. I'll be posting all these links in the description below. So let's save. Actually, let me reload the whole app. Okay, cool. So now what I like to do in my project is I'll create a bunch of handy classes. For example, let's say if something is repeating over and over again, I'll create a class for it and then use that class instead of using styles everywhere. Okay, so now what I like doing in the project that I work on is if some styles are very repetitive. Now what I like doing in my projects is if some styles are getting repeated over and over again, I'll create a class for those and put it under like utility classes or something. So what I'll do here is I'll create a folder called styles, And then inside styles, I'll create a folder called global. And inside global, I'll create a file called util.sessions, and we'll put all our utility classes in this. So first utility class would be the font. So I'm using a font called Varela. So it'll be, now this is the font that we are importing from Google Fonts. Font family, Varela round, and sans serif as a backup font. Always give importance to your utility classes, or else if you're using, like, let's say Bootstrap or something, it'll overwrite. Most probably it'll overwrite the styling. It'll overwrite your utility classes. And let's also add some color utility classes. So we'll be using green, and that is 10B981. And let's also use that as a background green. Go ahead and copy this. White. And trust me, these utility classes will make your styling, like, it takes a bit of time to set everything up, but this will make your life much easier when it comes to styling and stuff. Create some effects. Now you can use something like Bootstrap and use utility classes for Bootstrap, but that is usually like overkill because it comes with a lot of other stuff that you might not use. Space between. We are almost done. So let me go ahead and put important here as well. Alright, that's pretty much it for all the utility classes that we need. So now let's go ahead and create a file called styles.scss under styles, where we'll be importing all our files, SCSS files. Alright, let's also add a file under global called common.scss. Now this is where we'll be putting all of the common styles that are applied throughout the pages. So let's start with body. Give it a background color of F6, F6, and import that as well. Alright, that's pretty much it for now. I'll go ahead and import style.scss inside our app. Right, let's see if our styles, yeah, as you can see our styles are being applied successfully, so that's good. One more thing that we need to import in our app is our semantic min css that we installed using npm, because we'll be using a lot of components from semantic UI React library, so the styling is needed for those components. All right, so awesome. And we can finally start building the components for our app. All right, so we can finally start building our app. So what I'll do here is get rid of this stuff first. Okay, so let's create component called nodes and return an empty React fragment for now. So we want to have a sidebar where we want to display all the nodes, and then we also want to have an input to search those nodes by. So first thing what I'll do is I'll import use context hook along with use state and use effect. So let's get our nodes and dispatch function from context first. I forgot to import context. Let's pass our context to use context. All right, so now we have access to our state and a dispatch function. Cool. So now we want to have a sidebar to display all the nodes. So what I'll do is I want to create a separate component for a sidebar. So inside components, I'll create a file called sidebar.js, and then React. Okay, so along with React, we also want to import link from next link. Because sidebar will have all the nodes, we want to link those nodes to their specific pages. And we will also be importing button segment and input from semantic UI React. Now if you need more info on these, you can just simply go to semanticui.com, semantic UI React for more documentation. Awesome. Okay, so let's import use effect, use state hooks, and then setup has mounted state variable using use state. Initially the value will be false, and we also want to set up filtered nodes. Now we'll be using this variable for our search functionality. So let's use effect, inside use effect. Now leaving this empty means it will only run once the component renders. Set has mounted to false. So this is basically to track if the component has mounted or not. Okay, we also want to pass few props to this component. So nodes, as in all our nodes, and set active node. Now this basically means whenever the nodes changes, we basically want to rerun whatever we're passing as a function to use effect. So whenever nodes array change, it'll rerun this function. Okay, let's add our conditional. If the component has not mounted, simply return null. Now here's the reason why we need to do this unnecessary step. Because Next.js will try to load generate all the pages statically during build time, component is not mounted at that time. So during the build time, we simply want to return null. Otherwise, there will be a difference between the generated page and the step when React try to rehydrate your page, and React will throw an error. So what we'll do is return a div class sidebar input name is search. Let's give it a placeholder. Give it the class names. Now this is where our utility functions will come in handy. So for class names, we want it to be w-full search input and varela. And then let's render all our nodes. Now what I want to do here is I want to see if the filter node length is greater than 0. If it is, that means there are some nodes to render. So what we will do is segment dot group and loop through all our nodes using map. Every node in an nodes array will have an ID, a title, and node content. So okay, segment title, and then also let's give it class names. Pointer and gorilla. Alright, and we want to also handle the node input search, but before we do that, let's just render it on the screen so we see something. Let's import sidebar. Okay, so if homepage flex and also we want to pass it active node. Now active node is basically whatever you are seeing on the homepage screen. So let's do okay, let's save. Now for some reason our sidebar is not showing up. Let's see. Oh, because this. So we have to set it to true once the component mounts. Save. Okay, awesome. So I do have some nodes already in the local storage. That's why it's loading. Let me just show you the local storage. Application. Yeah, here. lscache.nodes. Awesome. Okay, now let's work on the filter functionality. So what I want to do is on change handle search. Okay. next to show. I'll probably just loop through all the nodes. And then just simply just search if the title of the node contains the string that user has entered. Set filtered nodes to show. Awesome. Let's see if it works. And it is not working. Why? Let's see. Okay. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, nice. Perfect. Next, we want to display on the right whatever node is active. So what I'll do is I'll create a component called nodes view to display the active node. So let's go ahead and create a component called nodesview.js. Let's import React, import link from next link. Import create a const called nodesview. Now we want to pass it two props: active node, which is a node that we want to display, and dispatch. Dispatch will be used for add or editing or deleting the node. So we want to return okay. Segment class name flex header. We want to render header as h1. Now as is a prop for header component that we are using from semantic UI React. Header, and then let's pass it a class name as well called Varilla. Now let's do if the active node exists. We do active node dot title or just return empty string. Awesome. And then we want to display the buttons, the edit and delete buttons as well. So we'll do active node, and so this is basically saying if active node exists, then render this. Actions want to link it to nodes and then active node ID. We'll still have to create this page, but we'll link it for now. And then we want to pass this link a button, and it pass it to utility classes as well. Varela, and then pass it to prop calls secondary. Okay, awesome. But we want to display the nodes content as well, so let's do this. Segment, and then add a few classes. Then we just want to return the active node if it exists. So we'll do this active node or just an empty string. Let's give it a min height as well. We'll just add inline styles. Min height of 500. Okay, awesome. I will add the method to handle delete functionality later. Let's import nodes view. Let's pass it active node and also dispatch. Oh, I forgot to export. Now I've finished adding the nodes view component to the index.js file, but as you can see it is squished all the way to the right. Now to make it look nice and spread out throughout the screen, we'll have to add some styling to it. So let's go ahead and add some styles. Now let me show you the final version of the app so you guys kind of get an idea of how we want to make it look. As you can see, the sidebar and the nodes view container is nicely spread out. So we'll make it look like this. So let's add some styling. Now under styles folder, I'll create another folder called components. I like separating out the styles in like separate folders to make the code more organized. Maybe it's overkill for this project because it's such a small project, but I still like keeping it this way because I want to keep the best practices going on no matter what the project size is. So I'll create a file called sidebar.scss and another file called nodes view .scss. So I'll put the sidebars So I'll put the sidebar styles first. So let's go ahead and do sidebar width to 30%, and then search input to be 10 pixel. Okay, let's import these. Okay. Now let's add the styles for notes view as well. So what I'll do is note view to 65% and h1 inside it at margin 0. There you go. Now you can see we are moving very close to our target of making the app look like this. But my app is kind of to all the way to the edges right now, so I want to make it centered. So what we can do is, let's go to underscore app.js and let me import a component from semantic UI. So I will import a component called container from semantic UI React, and I'll wrap all my app inside that container. Now what this will do will just make your app centered. It will limit it to certain width. As you can see, it kind of looks nice. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to change the color of this logo to how we have it here. So let's do that. Let's go to navigation. Oh, we haven't created the file. So let's create a file called navigation.scss. And the nav, let's give it a padding of 30 pixels. Okay, awesome. But we have created a utility class for the color itself, and it's called green. I'll just use this class. So I go to navigation, awesome, and let's also change the font to Varela. Awesome. So as you can see, we are moving quite along to the final version. Okay, awesome. So now what I want to do is I want to show a note here, whichever note the user clicks on. So let's do that. Okay, so inside notes, what I want to do is I want to check if the notes currently exist in the local storage. I want to set the first note as active note. So let's do that. else, or we don't have to do else actually. We can just do this. So I'm getting this error for some reason. Let's see what is causing it. Oh, I see. So we can only pass one child component to the link component that we are importing from Next.js, which kind of makes sense. So I'll go ahead and this should fix this error. Now we are getting this new error. What does it say? So objects are not valid React child object with keys. Okay, so where is this error coming from? So nodes view div segment div. Let me see. ID. Oh, it's here. So active node is an object and we are passing object straight to React component. That's why we're getting this error. So what we have to instead do is active node dot node. There you go. Let me refresh the whole app. Awesome. So this is the final version. We are very close to making our app look like the final version. So let's go ahead and first work on this delete functionality. So for delete functionality, what we want to do is whenever the delete button is clicked, we want to delete the active node. So let's go ahead and do that. What I want to do is unpick and delete. Let's create a function now called handle delete. Now whenever the delete button is clicked, we want to dispatch an action along with the ID of the node that we want to delete. So let's say the action type is delete node, and as payload we'll send the node ID. Okay, awesome. Now we want to handle this dispatch. So let's go to our context, and inside this reducer function, what I want to do is if the type is equal to delete node, then simply want to delete that node from our local host and also from our state. So first I'll get the ID from payload. So now I will create a const called filtered nodes, and I'll basically filter through all the nodes and return all nodes except the node with the ID that we have in the payload. So filter let's first update the local storage. Okay, awesome. So now let's try deleting the note. Now before that, let me also work on one more functionality. Whenever I click on these nodes, I want to update the active node. So let's do that first. So let's go to sidebar component. Now here what I want to do is on click this set active node to be title node and ID. That should do it. Yeah, perfect. So now let's test the delete functionality that we implemented. Okay, awesome. Now as you can see, even though I have deleted all my nodes, I still see node 1 as active. So let's fix that. So let's go to index.js, and here if the nodes.length is this, else what I'll do is I'll set active node back to null. Okay, awesome. Now let's work on the add node functionality. So in the sidebar, what I'll do is create a link. This link should go to href. And inside this link, let's put a button from Semantic UI React called add node. Add some classes to it. Gorilla, white, BG, green, and beautiful. Okay, awesome. So now whenever this node will be clicked, Next.js will redirect us to this new page, but we don't have that page currently. So let's go ahead and create that page. Now as you can see, this is a nested page. We have nodes and then we have new. So under pages, what I'll do is I'll create a folder called nodes, and then I'll create a file called new.js. Okay, so inside new.js, let's first import React. Let's import all the components that we need from Semantic UI React. So we'll need form, text area, button, and input. Let's also import a hook from Next.js called useRouter. Now useRouter can be used to redirect to different pages inside your Next.js app. Let's also import context. Great. Create a const called add node. And first let's just export it. Now let's return Now let's return just a empty div that says add node. Now I will go ahead and click on add node to make sure it's working. Okay, great. So now let's go ahead and add all the necessary components that we need for add node page. So if we go to our final app version and I click on add node, this is all we need. So we need a input field for title and an input field for our content for that node and an add button. So let's do that. So what I'll do is I'll create a div with a class of flex. Let's justify between, then add input along with button. Let's give button a class name of bg green white varela and to our input let's first do placeholder title. Okay, awesome. Okay, so after adding input and the add button, we'll have to add text area for user to enter the content for the node. So let's first take a look at the final project and see what it is. Click on here. So I will click on add node. So we have to add this text area for user to type the content for the node. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'll do is I've already imported form and text area from Semantic UI React. So I'll utilize those. Text area, I'll give it a min height. And a class name of w-full. Okay, awesome. Now let's add some styling to it to add some spacing around the elements itself. So this ads page is very similar to the edit page that we'll be building later. So because the styling will be common among these two pages, we'll go ahead and add styling in styles global in common.scss. So what I'll do is div.new.note, I'll add some margin to the button and to form UI. Save this. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that is the styling part of it. Now let's go ahead and add functionality to our add node page. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to set up a state variable to store the input value of of this input and of the text area. So I'll import use state hook from React. Title, set title. So initially it will just be empty string. And I'll do the same thing for note content as well. Note set note use state empty string. Okay, awesome. Now what I want to do here is on change I'll simply set the title to be e.target dot value. Now e dot target dot value is basically telling React to get the value of this input. Whatever user has entered in this input, get that. Okay, awesome. Now I'll do the same thing for text area as well. On change set note e dot target dot value. Okay, let's just test it, make sure nothing's broken. So okay, great. Now we want to add a click handler to this add button. So let's do that. So I'll do on click handle click. Okay, so let's get the the title and the node data. So remember to save the note in a local storage, we need three things. We need title of the note, content of the note, and ID to identify that note by. So what we'll do is simply do title and for the ID I'll use math.random to generate a random 4-digit ID. Okay, awesome. Because for these two properties, because the property name and the value are the same, I can shorten them down to just title and note. Okay, awesome. Now what we want to do is we want to get the dispatch function from our context. So let's import use context hook as well. So I've already imported the context itself from notes context. So what I'll do here is this no dispatch use context and I'll pass it the context. Okay, and then here what I'll do is I'll dispatch a new action with this payload. So I'll do type add note and the payload will be note to add. Okay, awesome. Now let's go ahead and handle this action in our reducer function. So I'll go to context, nodes context, and if the type is equal to add note, We simply want to return state and the payload. And we also want to make sure we save that note in the cache as well. So what we'll do is we'll set all notes similar to what we did here. So I'll just copy paste it. Okay, awesome. So now one thing to keep in mind is once the user adds the note, we want to redirect them back to home page. So in order to do that, we'll be using use router hook provided by Next router. So use router hook will let you redirect user without them having to click on a link or something. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'll do is I'll create a const called router, and after the user adds the node, I'll simply do router dot push. That should do it. The functionality is complete. Let's test it. Let me just go to home page first. Okay, so I'll click on add node. Okay, awesome. Looks like it's working. Let me try adding another node. Yeah, let me switch between the nodes. Yeah, let me try deleting a node. If I refresh, this node should persist. Okay, awesome. So that is our node functionality, add node functionality. So now we'll go ahead and finish the edit functionality. Okay, so let's first take a look at the final app to see how the edit functionality works. So I'll come here, just add a node. Okay, so let's say I want to edit this node. I'll click on edit button. Yeah, so now I can edit the node however I want and I'll hit save. Yeah, so this is the node that I added. So if I click on edit, now pay attention to the URL. The URL here is dynamic. So for every node, there'll be a different ID. So this URL will change. Now, in order to have dynamic routes, we'll be using something called a bracket syntax for our routes. I'll show you what they look like in a minute, but let's just first see the other two nodes. Now if I click on this node and hit edit, as you can see the ID is different. Now in order to accomplish that, we'll have to use a special syntax provided by Next.js. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll come back to my editor and create a new page but with a very special file name. Now pay attention to the file name. Now anything between the brackets will be act as a random or dynamic parameter and will have access to it. Now Next.js will match anything, let's say anything that goes to this URL to this file. And this number can be any random number. It doesn't even have to be number. It can be a string and that should match too. Okay, awesome. Now that you know about the dynamic routing in Next.js, let's go ahead and finish our edit functionality. So first, what I'll do is I'll import React. From React, let me import all the necessary components from semantic UI React. Text area, button, and input. Now we'll have to redirect the user after the finish editing the node. So we'll again import use router hook from next router. And we'll also need the context because after user finishes editing the node, will have to restore that node back in the context and in local storage. So first I'll just simply return a div with the edit node string in it just to make sure it's working. So class w dash full, I want the div to be 100% width. Edit node. So okay, awesome. Let's make sure this button is linked to this page. Okay, awesome. So now let's go to nodes view to make sure this button is linked. The edit button is linked. So I'll go to nodes view. This is the, yeah, looks like it's linked. So now if I click on this, it should work. Yeah, awesome. Great. And now pay attention to this. So there is a random ID in the URL bar. Cool. Let me just stay on this page. Cool. So next, let's add all the necessary components. Now let's go to the final app first and take a look. So we need, very similar to what we did on add node page, we need an input field for the title, text area for the node content, and a save button. Cool. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll add a div flex justify between I'll add an input and a save button. Let's add some classes to the button. Varela, BG green and white. Awesome. And for the input, let's add a placeholder. Okay, oh, so this class I did not name it properly. Great. Now let's go ahead and add text area. So form and text area. Awesome. So I'll add some min height to it. $500. Okay, awesome. Now similar to add note, I'll also have to store the value of the title and the content text area. in some state variable. So I'll import use state from React. Let's set up the state variables. One second. Yeah, I forgot to do one thing in the add node. So the value of this input and the text area should be set to the state variables. So what I'll do here is value. So we just want to make sure this input area is getting the value directly from the state and not from the user input. So the title, the note. Awesome. Use state. Now back to our edit node page. Okay, awesome. Let's set the values. To title, and for the text area is note. Now we want to do the same thing we did in add new note page. So on change, run this function. So we want to set the title to be e.target.value. I'll just go ahead and copy paste this instead of typing the whole thing. Instead of title, set title, I'll do set note. Okay, awesome. Let's also add some styling to this page to make it look nice. So remember, we already have styling for the add note page, so we'll just go ahead and utilize that. Go to styles, global, and I'll do awesome. So now let's add the functionality that we need. So we first need the dispatch function, that's for sure. So let's set that up first. Let me import the use context hook. Let's also set up the router. This use router is not only used to redirect the user, we can also use it to get this ID in the URL, get the dynamic parameter in the URL. So, and I want to store that dynamic parameter in a state variable. So I'll go ahead and set up a state variable for that. So I'll do note ID and set note ID. Actually it will be null, but I'll check in the using use effect if the ID has changed. So what I'll do is use the effect, and for the dependencies array I will pass it the router. Okay, now let's get the node ID from the parameters, from this URL parameters. Okay, now remember, so the parameter name will be similar to what you have mentioned inside the square brackets. So I've mentioned NID, short for node ID. That's what I'm using here. So if the node ID is not undefined or any falsy value, I'll set node ID to NID. Great. And the node to edit. So along with this patch, I also want to get all nodes. Node to edit. Now we want to simply loop through all the nodes and get the node with the ID matching to this node ID. Okay, awesome. And we will set the title and the node content to this node to edit. Okay, great. Let's first test this functionality. Let me just refresh, and if I hit edit now, so it is not loading the content for some reason. So our ID is 662. Oh, okay. I know why. So because the filter will return an array, so we want to get that the first element of that array. So I'll do 0, and this should work. I think what is happening is, so the parameter that we get is currently a string, and the ID that we get from the state is a number, and we are using triple equals, so it's strictly checking the types as well. So I'll just switch it to double equals, and this should work. Okay, awesome. Let me get rid of the consoles. Let me go to home page. If I click edit, nice. Okay, so next I want to handle this save note button. So what I'll do is, whenever this button is clicked, save the note in the local storage and in the state. I'll do handle save. I simply want to dispatch a new action with the type of edit note, and the payload is title, note, and the ID is note ID. And we want to then redirect the user back to home page after they are done editing the note. So I'll do router dot push. Okay, great. So now let's go back to our context and handle this action, edit note. So if the type is edit note, I want to get the ID, title, and note from payload. Payload, and then we'll filter the notes. State dot filter. Just want to make sure the note ID is not equal to ID that we got from the payload, is not equals to this ID. And then we'll simply do title dot note. Great. And then we want to save that in the local storage set all nodes and return filter nodes. This will update the state. Okay, great. Now that was a lot, so let's just test it first. Okay, so cannot read property nodes of undefined. Oh, it got updated. Okay, that's good. Let me just try editing it. Oh, it was working. I just needed to refresh the page. So let's just test it one more time. 5 random string. Save. Yeah, looks like it's working. Yeah. Let me try adding another node. Node 2. Node 2 content. Add. Yeah, node 2. Let's switch between the nodes. Let's search. Node 2. Yeah, that is working. So let's try editing node 2. Yeah, so it did change the title. Let's try deleting. Let me first try refreshing. So if I refresh, yeah, the nodes persist. Let me try deleting and now refreshing. Okay, awesome. Great. Yes, so that is pretty much it for now. Hope you guys enjoy the tutorial. Now, so I'll post a link to the Google fonts that we are using in the project and also to the GitHub repo where you can find all the files for this project. Thank you. Hope you guys enjoy this. Please make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments below what you think about this project.